I should have known something was wrong the night Marla came home smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It was a Thursday in October, one of those crisp Midwestern evenings when the leaves are turning and the air smells like wood smoke and dying things. I was sitting in my home office, staring at engineering schematics for a water treatment facility, when I heard her car pull into the driveway, 45 minutes late. Again. "Sorry, honey," she called out, her voice bright and artificial as she kicked off her heels in the foyer. Brett needed me to stay late on the Henderson deposition. Brett. Always Brett these days. Brett Garvey, senior partner at Whitmore & Associates, Marla's boss for the past 3 years. 45 years old, divorced, drives a Range Rover that costs more than my annual salary, and thinks his law degree makes him God's gift to the greater Cleveland metropolitan area. I'm Nate Willis, 39, systems engineer at Midwest Infrastructure Solutions. I design water treatment plants and sewage systems. Not glamorous, but it pays well, and there's something satisfying about building things that actually work. My dad was a plumber, so I guess I'm just continuing the family tradition of dealing with other people's crap. "How was your day?" Marla asked, appearing in my office doorway. She'd already changed out of her work clothes into yoga pants and a t-shirt, her shoulder-length brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Fine," I said, studying her face. She looked flushed, her makeup slightly smudged around the edges. "Long meeting?" "You have no idea." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Brett is impossible when he's preparing for trial, wants everything perfect." "I bet he does." She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just agreeing with you." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and something flickered across her face. Excitement, maybe, or guilt. Hard to tell. "I'm going to take a shower," she announced, already turning away. I sat there for a long moment after she left, listening to the water pipes groan as the shower started upstairs. 39 years old, married for 16 years, 2 sons. Jesse was away at Ohio State. Max was 15 and upstairs probably playing video games, and suddenly I felt like I was living with a stranger. My best friend Pete would tell me I was being paranoid. Pete Morales, ex-Cleveland PD, now runs a security consulting business. We've known each other since high school, back when we were both just kids from the wrong side of town trying to make something of ourselves. I picked up my phone and texted him, "Beer tomorrow?" His response came immediately. "Always. Flannery's at 7? See you there." The next evening, I slid into a booth at Flannery's Irish pub across from Pete. He was already working on his first Guinness, his broad shoulders hunched over the scarred wooden table. Pete's got the build of a linebacker and the face of a guy who's seen too much, which, given his years on the force, he has. "You look like hell," he said by way of greeting. "Thanks. You're pretty as a picture yourself." He grinned. "What's eating you, Nate?" I took a long pull from the beer the waitress had just delivered. "Marla's having an affair." Pete's smile vanished. "You sure?" "No, maybe. I don't know." I ran my hand through my hair. Late nights at work, always on her phone, new perfume. She's lost weight, started dressing nicer, all the cliches. "Who do you think it is?" "Her boss, Brett Garvey." Pete whistled low. "The guy with the Range Rover? Saw him on the news last month, some charity thing. Looks like a real piece of work." "That's being generous. He's one of those guys who thinks the rules don't apply to him. Old money, country club, the whole package." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. Part of me thinks I'm crazy, that I'm seeing things that aren't there. But then..." I paused, remembering. Last week I was doing laundry and found a cufflink in her blazer pocket. Silver, expensive, with initials engraved. BG. Could be anything. Maybe a client gave it to her. That's what she said when I asked. But Pete, the way she looked at me when I showed it to her, she was scared. Pete leaned back, his cop instincts clearly kicking in. You want me to look into it? I've got resources, can run surveillance, check phone records if you give me permission. That's not creepy at all. It's your marriage, man. You deserve to know the truth. I thought about it, swirling the beer in my glass. Let me think about it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just being paranoid because things have been rough lately. Rough how? The usual. Money stress, kids stress. We barely talk anymore unless it's about logistics. Who's picking up Max, when are the bills due, that kind of thing. We haven't had sex in 3 months. Pete winced. Ouch. Yeah. I finished my beer. Another round? 2 weeks later, I had my answer. I'd been working late at the office trying to finalize specs for a project in Akron. My business partner, Bob, had already gone home. He's got 4 kids and a wife who actually likes spending time with him, so I was alone when my phone rang. It was Max. Dad? Mom just left. Said she had to go back to the office for an emergency. I glanced at my watch. 9:30 on a Tuesday night. Did she say what kind of emergency? Something about a filing deadline. She seemed, I don't know, weird. Weird how? She changed her clothes before she left. Put on that black dress she wore to Aunt Linda's wedding. My stomach clenched. Okay, buddy. Thanks for letting me know. I'll be home in an hour. Dad, is everything okay? Everything's fine. Just do your homework and get to bed at a reasonable time, all right? After I hung up, I sat there staring at my computer screen without seeing it. An emergency filing deadline. In a cocktail dress. At 9:30 at night. I picked up my phone again and called Pete. I need that surveillance, I said when he answered. 3 days later, Pete called me at work. You free for lunch? We met at a diner near my office, one of those places with cracked vinyl booths and waitresses who call you hun. Pete slid a manila envelope across the table. You're not going to like this, he said. Inside were photographs. Marla and Brett at a steakhouse downtown. Marla and Brett in the parking garage of his office building, standing close, his hand on her lower back. Marla entering Brett's apartment building at 10:15 on a Tuesday night, the same night she'd told Max she had a filing emergency. The last photo showed them on Brett's balcony, visible through the sliding glass door. They were kissing. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Even though I'd suspected, even though I'd asked Pete to follow her, seeing the actual evidence was different. It made it real. How long? I managed to ask. Based on what I've seen, at least 6 months, maybe longer. They're careful, but not careful enough. Tuesday and Thursday nights, mostly. Sometimes they meet for lunch at that steakhouse. Delmonico's, the one on Euclid. He's got a regular table in the back. 6 months. I stared at the photos. In one of them, Marla was laughing at something Brett had said, her hand on his arm. She looked happy. Happier than I'd seen her look at home in years. I'm sorry, man, Pete said quietly. Don't be. I asked you to look. I gathered up the photos and put them back in the envelope. What do I do now? That's up to you. You could confront her, get a lawyer, file for divorce. And give her half of everything? Let Brett Garvey win? I shook my head. No. If I'm going down, I'm taking them both with me. Pete raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that Brett Garvey has spent his whole life getting away with whatever he wants. I'm thinking that he's probably got skeletons in his closet. And I'm thinking that I'm really good at finding structural weaknesses and exploiting them. Nate, I'm not going to do anything illegal, I said. But I'm also not going to just roll over and let them destroy my family. You with me? Pete studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm with you. But we do this smart, understand? No violence, nothing that's going to land you in jail. Agreed. We shook on it. Part 2. Discovery and Humiliation. I confronted Marla that night after Max went to bed. She was in the living room, curled up on the couch with her laptop, probably texting Brett. I walked in and tossed the manila envelope onto her lap. "What's this?" she asked, looking up at me with those big brown eyes that I'd once thought I could drown in. "Open it." She did. I watched her face go pale as she flipped through the photographs, one by one. When she finished, she looked up at me, and I was surprised to see anger in her expression rather than guilt. "You had me followed? You hired someone to spy on me?" "Don't." My voice came out harder than I'd intended. "Don't you dare try to make this about me invading your privacy. How long, Marla?" "Nate. How long?" She set the envelope aside and stood up, crossing her arms defensively. 8 months. It started at the firm's Christmas party. 8 months. Not 6. Pete had underestimated. "Are you in love with him?" I asked. She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. "I don't know," she finally said. "Maybe. He makes me feel alive, special, like I matter. And I don't make you feel that way? You make me feel like a housekeeper and a taxi service for Max." Her voice rose. "When's the last time you took me out to dinner, Nate? When's the last time you bought me flowers or told me I looked beautiful? You're so busy with your engineering projects and your beer nights with Pete that you barely notice I exist. So this is my fault?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You cheat on me for 8 months and somehow I'm the bad guy? I'm not saying it's your fault, I'm saying—" She stopped, tears starting to stream down her face. "I'm saying our marriage has been dead for years and you know it." Maybe she was right. Maybe we had been going through the motions, 2 people sharing a house and a mortgage, but not much else. But that didn't excuse what she'd done. "I want you out," I said quietly. "What?" "Out of this house, tonight. Go stay with Shelby or your mother or Brett for all I care. But I want you gone. Nate, please, get out." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Fine. But you should know something. Brett wants to marry me. Once our divorce is final, he's going to propose. Congratulations. I'm sure you'll be very happy in your fancy house with your fancy husband." I turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and Marla? Brett's still married? Did he mention that? His divorce isn't final yet either. So I guess you're both just a couple of cheaters waiting for your happily ever after." I left her there and went upstairs to check on Max. He was asleep, his room lit only by the glow of his computer screen. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him breathe, and felt my resolve harden. Nobody was going to destroy my family and get away with it. Marla moved out the next day while I was at work. She took her clothes, some furniture, and apparently half the silverware. She also took the good coffee maker, which felt particularly petty. Max was devastated. I told him his mother and I were separating, that it had nothing to do with him, all the things you're supposed to say. But he wasn't stupid. He knew something bad had happened. "Is she coming back?" he asked. "I don't know, buddy. Probably not." He nodded, his jaw tight, trying not to cry. He looked so much like me at that age. Dark hair, sharp features, trying to be tough when his world was falling apart. Did she do something bad? I wanted to tell him the truth, to explain that his mother had betrayed us, but I couldn't do that to him. Not yet. "Sometimes people just grow apart," I said instead. "It's nobody's fault, but it was somebody's fault. It was Marla's fault for cheating, and it was Brett Garvey's fault for being the kind of man who seduces his married employees, and they were both going to pay." The first strike came courtesy of Shelby Martin, Marla's best friend since college. Shelby was one of those women who lived for gossip, who treated other people's drama like her personal entertainment. Marla had probably run straight to her after our confrontation. I'd been counting on that. I called Shelby 2 days after Marla moved out. "Nate?" She sounded surprised. "I'm so sorry about everything. Marla's staying with me, you know. She's just devastated." "I'm sure she is," I said dryly. "Listen, Shelby, I need to ask you something. Did you know about the affair?" Silence on the other end of the line. Shelby? Marla might have mentioned something, but I told her she should talk to you, work things out. How long have you known? Nate, I don't think... How long, Shelby? 6 months, she admitted. But I swear, I told her it was wrong. I told her she was making a mistake. 6 months. So Shelby had known for half a year and never said a word to me. Some friend. Thanks for being honest, I said. By the way, you might want to check the neighborhood Facebook group. Someone posted something interesting. What are you talking about? I hung up. 20 minutes earlier, I'd created a fake Facebook account and posted in our neighborhood group, one of those busybody community pages where people complain about barking dogs and suspicious cars. The post included 2 of Pete's surveillance photos, Marla and Brett at the steakhouse, and Marla entering Brett's apartment building. The caption read, "Does anyone know this woman? She's married to Nate Willis on Oakmont Drive, but she seems to be spending a lot of time with this man who is not her husband. Thought the community should know what kind of people we have living among us." It was petty. It was cruel. And within an hour, it had 63 comments and 27 shares. My phone started ringing. Neighbors, friends, people I barely knew. Everyone wanted to know if it was true, if Marla was really having an affair, if we were getting divorced. I didn't answer. I just sat back and watched the social media wildfire spread. By that evening, someone had identified Brett from his law firm's website. By the next morning, someone else had discovered that Brett was still technically married, that his divorce wasn't final. The comments got vicious. What a homewrecker. That poor man. And they have kids. I always thought she was stuck up. Now we know why. Both of them should be ashamed. Disgusting. Marla called me, screaming, "How could you? How could you humiliate me like this?" I didn't post those photos, I said calmly. It was technically true. The fake account couldn't be traced back to me. Pete had made sure of that. Bullshit. You're the only one who had those pictures. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to parade your affair around town. Actions have consequences, Marla. She hung up on me. Brett called an hour later. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Mr. Willis. His voice was smooth, cultured, the kind of voice that came from expensive prep schools and Ivy League universities. I think we need to talk. I don't have anything to say to you. I understand you're upset, but posting those photos was inappropriate and possibly illegal. I'm prepared to file a harassment suit if you don't remove them immediately. I laughed. Go ahead, sue me. I'm sure the publicity will be great for your law practice. Senior partner sues husband of woman he's sleeping with. The Cleveland Plain dealer will love it. Mr. Willis, let me make something clear, Brett. You thought you could just take my wife, destroy my family, and face no consequences. But you picked the wrong guy to mess with. I'm not one of your country club buddies who'll just roll over and take it. I'm from the streets and I fight dirty. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You want Marla? Fine, have her. But I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. And when I'm done, you'll wish you'd never met her. I hung up before he could respond. Pete called 5 minutes later. Did you just threaten a lawyer? Maybe. Nate, I know. It was stupid, but it felt good. Well, enjoy the feeling, because his security guy just contacted me. Tyler Brennan, ex-Marine, now Brett's personal bodyguard/fixer. He's asking questions about you, about me, about the surveillance. Let him ask. Nate, these aren't good guys. Brett Garvey runs with some serious people. You need to be careful. I'm always careful, but I wasn't careful enough. Part 3. Engineering Revenge. 2 days later, I was leaving my office when someone stepped out of the shadows in the parking garage. Tyler Brennan was exactly what you'd expect from an ex-Marine turned security consultant. 6'2", buzz cut, shoulders like a linebacker, and eyes that had seen combat. Nate Willis? Who's asking? Tyler Brennan, I work for Brett Garvey. He moved closer, and I noticed his hand resting casually on his belt, near where someone might carry a concealed weapon. Mr. Garvey wanted me to deliver a message. Back off. Delete those photos. Stop harassing Ms. Willis. If you don't, things might get unpleasant. Is that a threat? It's friendly advice. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You seem like a smart guy. Smart guys know when to walk away. And if I don't? Then you might find that bad things happen to people who don't listen to friendly advice. Accidents, break-ins. Maybe something happens to that kid of yours. Max, right? 15 years old, goes to Lincoln High. Something cold and sharp crystallized in my chest. You leave my son out of this. Then leave Mr. Garvey alone. Simple as that. Tyler stepped back, his message delivered. Have a good evening, Mr. Willis. I watched him walk away, my hands clenched into fists. He'd just threatened Max. These people had actually threatened my son. I called Pete from my car. They just threatened Max. What? I told him about Tyler's visit. Pete was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he said finally. That changes things. If they're willing to threaten a kid, they're serious. Maybe you should back off, Nate. File for divorce. Split everything. Move on with your life. No. Nate, no. They don't get to threaten my family and win. I'm ending this, Pete. But I need your help. Another long silence. Then, what do you need? Everything you can find on Brett Garvey. Financial records, court documents, social media, everything. There's got to be something we can use. Nobody's that clean. I'll see what I can dig up. But Nate, be careful. These guys play for keeps. Pete came through 3 days later with a file folder full of information. We met at his office, a converted warehouse in the industrial district that he'd turned into a surprisingly nice workspace. Brett Garvey, Pete said, spreading documents across his desk. 45 years old, senior partner at Whitmore & Associates, specializes in corporate law. Net worth approximately $8 million. Divorced once, currently separated from his second wife. 2 kids from the first marriage, both adults. And here's where it gets interesting. He pulled out a stack of photographs. Brett's got a hobby, illegal street racing. I leaned forward, studying the photos. They showed Brett standing next to a vintage Shelby Mustang, surrounded by other expensive cars and tough-looking guys. Street racing? Not the fast and furious kind. This is old-school, organized races out on the industrial roads near the lake. Big money, big egos. Technically illegal, but the cops look the other way because half the participants are rich guys with connections. How'd you find this? I've got a buddy who's into the car scene. Recognized Brett from your description. Apparently he's a regular. Races that Mustang about once a month. Bets 20-30,000 a race. I felt a smile spreading across my face. When's the next race? Saturday night. Why? Because I've got an idea. The race was held in an abandoned industrial park near the lake, the kind of place where factories used to stand before the jobs moved overseas. About 50 people were there when Pete and I arrived, standing around expensive cars that gleamed under the streetlights. Brett's Mustang was easy to spot. Cherry red, immaculate, probably worth $200,000. He was standing next to it with Tyler and a couple of other guys, laughing about something. You sure about this? Pete muttered. Positive. You got the stuff? He handed me a small bottle. Synthetic polymer compound. Mix it with motor oil, and it'll cause the engine to seize up. But Nate, if anyone sees you, they won't. I waited until Brett and his crew walked away to talk to another racer, then moved quickly toward the Mustang. The hood was unlocked. These guys were too confident, too sure nobody would dare mess with their cars. It took me 30 seconds to pop the hood, locate the oil cap, and pour in the compound. Another 30 seconds to close everything up and walk away. Pete and I watched from a distance as the races started. Brett's race was third, against a guy in a modified Corvette. They lined up, engines roaring, and then they were off. Brett took the lead immediately. The Mustang was fast, I'd give him that. He was pulling away from the Corvette, probably already counting his winnings. Then, about halfway through the race, the Mustang's engine made a sound like a dying animal. Smoke started pouring from under the hood. Brett managed to pull over before the whole thing seized up completely, but the damage was done. The Corvette won. Brett lost $30,000, and more importantly, he was humiliated in front of all his racing buddies. Pete and I left before anyone could ask questions. But I wasn't done. Over the next 2 weeks, I made Brett Garvey's life a living hell. I created fake social media accounts and posted his racing photos with captions about illegal gambling. I sent anonymous tips to the IRS about his cash transactions. I contacted his ex-wife, a bitter woman named Patricia, who was more than happy to share stories about Brett's infidelities and financial manipulations during their marriage. Most importantly, I started following him, learning his patterns, documenting his life. I discovered that Brett had a weekly poker game with other lawyers and businessmen. I discovered that he'd been skimming money from client escrow accounts to fund his racing habit. I discovered that he'd been sleeping with at least 2 other women besides Marla, and I documented everything. Marla called me during this time, her voice small and scared. "Nate, please stop. Whatever you're doing, just stop. Brett is furious. He thinks you sabotaged his car. He's talking about pressing charges." Let him try. He'd have to admit he was street racing, which is illegal. Plus, he has no proof I did anything. "Please, I know I hurt you, but this has gone too far." "Too far? Marla, you had an affair for 8 months. You destroyed our marriage. You let that man threaten our son, and you think I've gone too far?" "I didn't know he was going to threaten Max. I told him not to." "You told him?" I couldn't believe it. "You knew Tyler came after me?" Silence. "Get out of my life, Marla, and tell your boyfriend that if he or his attack dog come near Max again, I'll burn his entire world to the ground." I hung up and immediately called Pete. "I need more. Whatever dirt you can find on Brett Garvey, I need it now." Pete delivered 2 days later with something even better than I'd hoped for. "Brett's been embezzling from his law firm," he said, handing me a flash drive. "Client escrow accounts mostly. Small amounts spread out over years. Total take is probably close to $500,000. How'd you find this?" "I've got a buddy who's a forensic accountant. Owed me a favor. He hacked into the firm's servers, don't ask me how, and found the discrepancies. It's all on this drive." I held the flash drive like it was made of gold. This could destroy him. It could send him to prison. Embezzlement is serious, Nate. We're talking felony charges, disbarment, the whole 9 yards. Good. But here's the thing. If you turn this over to the authorities, they're going to ask how you got it, and that could come back on you and my buddy. I thought about it. What if it came from an anonymous source? Someone inside the firm who noticed the irregularities? Could work, but you'd need to be careful about how you release it. Leave that to me. I spent the next week planning my masterstroke. I wasn't just going to destroy Brett Garvey's career. I was going to humiliate him publicly, the same way Marla's affair had humiliated me. Brett was scheduled to speak at a charity gala the following Saturday, one of those rubber chicken dinners where rich people congratulate themselves for donating money. He was receiving some kind of community service award for his pro bono legal work. The irony was delicious. I bought a ticket to the gala under a fake name. I prepared a presentation on a laptop, all of Pete's evidence laid out in simple, damning detail. Photos of Brett at illegal races, bank records showing the embezzlement, screenshots of text messages between Brett and his various mistresses, including Marla. And I waited. Part 4. The Masterstroke. The gala was held at the Cleveland Renaissance Hotel in a ballroom that probably cost more to rent for one night than I made in a month. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, and found my seat near the back. Brett was at the head table, looking smug and satisfied in his tuxedo. Marla was with him, wearing a red dress that I'd never seen before. She looked beautiful and miserable at the same time. The dinner was exactly as boring as I'd expected. Speeches about community service and giving back, a silent auction for vacation packages and sports memorabilia, everyone patting themselves on the back for being such wonderful people. Finally, it was time for Brett to receive his award. He walked up to the podium, all smiles and false humility. "Thank you so much for this honor. I've always believed that those of us who've been fortunate have a responsibility to give back to our community." I stood up and walked toward the front of the room. People started noticing me, frowning, wondering who this guy was and where he was going. Brett saw me and stopped mid-sentence. His face went pale. "Sorry to interrupt," I said loudly, pulling out my phone. "But I think everyone here should know who they're honoring tonight." Security started moving toward me, but I was already connecting my phone to the venue's AV system. I'd scoped out the setup earlier, found the wireless connection, and prepared everything in advance. One of the benefits of being an engineer, you understand how systems work. The screens around the ballroom lit up with my presentation. "This is Brett Garvey," I said, pointing to the first slide, a photo of Brett at an illegal race. Community servant, and also an illegal street racer who gambles tens of thousands of dollars every month. Gasps from the audience. Brett started shouting, "This is slander! Security, get him out of here!" But security was watching the screens too. "This is Brett Garvey," I continued, advancing to the next slide, bank records showing the embezzlement, and also an embezzler who's stolen nearly $500,000 from his law firm's client escrow accounts. More gasps. Someone in the audience said, "Oh my God." "And this is Brett Garvey," I said, showing the final slides, screenshots of his text messages with Marla and 2 other women, having affairs with multiple women, including my wife, while lying to all of them about being faithful. The room erupted. People were shouting, pointing, pulling out their phones to record everything. Brett was trying to get off the stage, but reporters who'd been covering the gala were blocking his path, shouting questions. Marla was crying at the head table. Security finally reached me and grabbed my arms. "Sir, you need to leave. Now." "I'm going," I said calmly. "I just wanted everyone to know the truth about your guest of honor." They escorted me out of the ballroom, but the damage was done. As I was being led through the lobby, I could see people inside still watching the screens, still talking, still recording. By the time I got home, the story was already on social media. By morning, it would be on the news. Brett Garvey was finished. The fallout was spectacular. The law firm launched an immediate investigation into the embezzlement allegations. Brett was suspended pending the outcome. The Ohio State Bar Association opened their own investigation. The IRS got involved. Brett's ex-wife, Patricia, filed a motion to reopen their divorce settlement, claiming he'd hidden assets. His current wife, the one he'd been separated from, filed for full custody of their kids and a restraining order. The illegal racing scene went underground, and several of Brett's racing buddies were arrested in a police sweep. Turned out the cops had been building a case for months, and my public revelation gave them the excuse they needed to move. And Marla? She called me 3 days after the gala, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "He lied to me, Nate, about everything. He said he was getting divorced, that he loved me, that we'd be together, but he was sleeping with other women the whole time. And now the firm fired me. They said I was part of the embezzlement scheme, that I helped him cover it up." "Were you?" "No. I swear I didn't know anything about the money. But they don't believe me. Nobody believes me. My career is over. Brett won't return my calls. Shelby won't talk to me anymore. Everyone thinks I'm a criminal." Part of me felt sorry for her, but a larger part, the part that had been humiliated and betrayed, felt satisfied. "You made your choices, Marla. Now you have to live with them." "Please, Nate. I know I don't deserve your help, but I have nowhere else to go. Can I come home? Can we try to work things out?" "No. Please. You destroyed our marriage for a man who was using you. You let him threaten our son. You humiliated me in front of our friends and neighbors, and now that everything's fallen apart, you want to come running back? No. File for divorce, split our assets, and move on with your life. We're done." I hung up and blocked her number. But it still wasn't over. 2 days later, Tyler Brennan showed up at my house. It was late, after midnight, and I was in my home office when I heard glass breaking downstairs. I grabbed my phone and called 911, then crept to the top of the stairs. Tyler was in my living room, smashing picture frames and overturning furniture. "Where are you, Willis?" he shouted. "You destroyed Mr. Garvey's life. Now I'm going to destroy yours." I heard sirens in the distance, the police responding to my call. Tyler heard them too. He looked around wildly, then spotted me at the top of the stairs. "This isn't over," he snarled, pointing at me. "You hear me? This isn't over." He ran out the back door, just as police cars pulled up outside. The cops took my statement, photographed the damage, and put out a warrant for Tyler's arrest. They found him 6 hours later, drunk in a bar downtown, still ranting about Brett Garvey and revenge. Tyler was charged with breaking and entering, destruction of property, and making terroristic threats. Combined with his priors, turned out he'd been dishonorably discharged from the Marines for assaulting a superior officer. He was looking at serious prison time. 3 weeks after the gala, I was sitting in my office when Pete called. "Turn on Channel 5, now." I pulled up the news on my computer. The anchor was reporting on Brett Garvey's arrest, charged with embezzlement, money laundering, and fraud. If convicted, he faces up to 20 years in prison. His law license has been suspended, and he's been disbarred pending the outcome of the criminal trial. We're also hearing reports that the FBI is investigating connections between Garvey and several organized crime figures involved in illegal gambling. I watched as they showed footage of Brett being led out of his apartment in handcuffs, his face pale and defeated. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. "You did it," Pete said. "You actually took him down." "We did it," I corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you." "So what now?" "Now I focus on rebuilding my life, taking care of Max, moving forward." "And Marla?" "She's filed for divorce. Her lawyer's asking for spousal support and half of everything. My lawyer says we'll probably settle for less, given the circumstances. She's not going to prison. The investigation cleared her of any involvement in the embezzlement, but her legal career is over. Last I heard, she's working as a paralegal at some small firm in Akron." "How do you feel about that?" I thought about it. Honestly, I don't feel much of anything anymore. The anger's gone. The need for revenge is gone. I just feel tired. "That's normal. You've been through hell." "Yeah, but I came out the other side. That's what matters." 6 months later, I was at Jesse's college graduation when I saw Marla for the first time since the divorce was finalized. She looked different, thinner, older, harder around the edges. She was standing alone near the back of the crowd, watching as Jesse walked across the stage to receive his diploma. After the ceremony, she approached me hesitantly. "Hi, Nate." "Marla, Jesse looks good, happy. He is." Awkward silence. Then, "I'm sorry for everything. I know that doesn't change anything, but I wanted you to know." I looked at her. This woman I'd spent 16 years of my life with, who'd given me 2 sons, who'd betrayed me in the worst possible way, and realized I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't love her either. Nothing. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said finally. "I really do. Thank you." She wiped at her eyes. "Can I ask you something? Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" "I don't know. Maybe someday, but not today." She nodded, accepting this. "Take care of yourself, Nate, and take care of our boys." "I will." She walked away, and I watched her go, feeling something like closure settle over me. Part 5. The Final Confrontation. But the story wasn't quite finished. 2 months after Jesse's graduation, I got a call from Pete. Brett Garvey's out on bail pending his trial, And Nate, he's been asking about you, where you live, where you work, what kind of car you drive. Should I be worried? I don't know. Maybe. The guy's lost everything, his career, his money, his reputation. People do crazy things when they've got nothing left to lose. I thanked Pete and hung up, then sat there thinking. Brett Garvey had threatened my family once before. Was he desperate enough to try again? I decided not to take chances. I installed a security system at my house. I varied my route to and from work. I made sure Max knew to be careful, to stay aware of his surroundings. 3 weeks later, Brett made his move. I was working late at the office, again, when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. The building should have been empty, except for security. The footsteps stopped outside my door. I know you're in there, Willis. Brett's voice, slurred, angry, dangerous. I grabbed my phone and texted Pete. Brett's here, office, need help. Then I stood up and opened the door. Brett looked terrible. His expensive suit was rumpled and stained. His hair was greasy and uncombed. His eyes were bloodshot and wild. And he was holding a gun. You destroyed my life, he said, pointing the gun at me with a shaking hand. Everything I built, everything I worked for, gone, because of you. You destroyed your own life, I said, keeping my voice calm. I just made sure everyone knew the truth about who you really are. The truth? He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You self-righteous prick. You think you're so much better than me? You're just a plumber's kid who got lucky. I'm from old money. I went to Yale. I was supposed to be somebody. You were somebody. And then you decided that wasn't enough. You had to have more. More money, more women, more everything. And when you couldn't get it legally, you stole it. You embezzled from your clients. You cheated on your wives. You threatened a 15-year-old kid. That's on you, Brett, not me. Shut up. He stepped closer, the gun wavering. Just shut up. You don't get to judge me. I'm not judging you. The courts are doing that. The courts. He spat the words. I'm going to prison, Willis. 20 years, my lawyer says. 20 years in a cage because you couldn't just let it go. Because you had to have your revenge. You're going to prison because you committed crimes. I just made sure you got caught. Well, now I'm going to make sure you pay for it. His finger tightened on the trigger. I dove to the side just as the gun went off. The bullet hit my computer monitor, shattering it. I rolled behind my desk, heart pounding, ears ringing from the gunshot. Come out, Willis. Face me like a man. I heard him moving around the desk, coming for me. I looked around desperately for anything I could use as a weapon. My eyes landed on a heavy engineering trophy on the shelf. Some award I'd won years ago for a water treatment design. As Brett came around the desk, I grabbed the trophy and swung it as hard as I could. It caught him in the wrist. He screamed and dropped the gun. I kicked it away, then tackled him, both of us crashing to the floor. He was bigger than me, but I was angrier. I got on top of him and pinned him down, my forearm across his throat. It's over, Brett. It's done. You lost. He stared up at me, tears streaming down his face. You took everything from me. No, you took everything from yourself. I just held up a mirror. We stayed like that until Pete arrived with 2 police officers. They arrested Brett for attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and violating his bail conditions. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at me one last time. I hope you're happy, Willis. I hope destroying me was worth it. It wasn't about destroying you, I said. It was about protecting my family. You should have left us alone. Brett Garvey's trial lasted 3 weeks. He was convicted on all counts: embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, attempted murder. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in prison without possibility of parole for 15 years. Tyler Brennan got 8 years for his break-in and assault charges. Marla moved to Columbus and started over, working as a paralegal and living in a small apartment. She saw Max and Jesse occasionally, but our relationship remained cordial and distant. Max graduated from high school with honors and got accepted to MIT. He wanted to be an engineer, like his dad. Jesse finished his degree and got a job at a tech company in Austin. He called me every Sunday. And me? I kept working. Kept designing water treatment plants and sewage systems. Kept building things that actually worked. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious. Maybe someday I'd be ready for another relationship. But for now, I was content being alone, being a father, being myself. One evening, about a year after Brett's sentencing, Pete and I were having beers at Flannery's. It had become our ritual again. Friday nights, same booth, same drinks. "You ever regret it?" Pete asked. "Going after Brett like that?" I thought about it, swirling my beer. No. He threatened my family. He destroyed my marriage. He deserved what he got. But was it worth it? All that time, all that energy focused on revenge? You know what the funny thing is? It wasn't really about revenge. Not at the end. It was about justice. About making sure that people like Brett Garvey don't get to just walk away from the damage they cause. That's very philosophical of you. I've had a lot of time to think about it. I took a drink. Brett thought he was untouchable. He thought his money and his connections would protect him. But they didn't. Because at the end of the day, the truth matters. Actions have consequences. And nobody, no matter how rich or powerful, is above the law. When did you become so wise? When I stopped being angry and started being strategic. I smiled. Engineering mindset. Identify the problem, find the structural weakness, apply the right amount of pressure in the right place. The system collapses. You're a scary guy, Nate Willis. Only to people who deserve it. We clinked our glasses together and drank to that. 3 years after everything happened, I was cleaning out my home office when I found the manila envelope Pete had given me all those years ago. The one with the surveillance photos of Marla and Brett. I looked through them one last time, these images that had started everything. Marla laughing at something Brett said. Brett's hand on her back. The two of them kissing on his balcony. They seemed like pictures of strangers now, people I used to know in another life. I took the photos outside and burned them in the fire pit in my backyard. Watched them curl and blacken and turn to ash. It felt good, like closing a chapter, like finally letting go. Max came outside and stood next to me, watching the flames. He was 18 now, about to leave for MIT. Tall and strong and smart, a good kid who'd survived his parents' divorce and come out okay on the other side. "What are you burning?" he asked. "The past." He nodded, understanding without needing more explanation. "Are you okay, Dad?" "Yeah, buddy, I'm okay. Better than okay, actually." And I was. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely happy, content, at peace. "Dad," Max said after a moment, "thank you." "For what?" "For protecting us, for fighting for our family, for not just giving up when everything went bad." I put my arm around his shoulders. That's what fathers do. We protect the people we love, no matter what it costs. Brett Garvey learned that the hard way. Yes, he did. We stood there together, watching the photos burn, watching the smoke rise into the darkening sky. Somewhere across town, Brett was in his prison cell, probably thinking about all the choices that had led him there. Somewhere in Columbus, Marla was living her small, diminished life, probably thinking about the same thing. But I wasn't thinking about them anymore. I was thinking about the future, about Max going to MIT, about Jesse's upcoming wedding, about the new water treatment plant I was designing for a town in Michigan, about all the good things still ahead. Revenge, I'd learned, wasn't really about destroying your enemies. It was about refusing to let them destroy you. It was about standing up and fighting back and making sure that justice, real justice, not just the legal kind, was served. Brett Garvey had thought he could take everything from me. My wife, my dignity, my peace of mind. He'd been wrong. I'd taken everything from him instead. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because some people need to learn that actions have consequences. That you can't just hurt people and walk away. that eventually, somewhere, somehow, someone will hold you accountable. I was that someone, and Brett Garvey would spend the next 15 years remembering it. The last photo curled and blackened and disappeared into ash. I stirred the fire pit with a stick, making sure nothing remained. "Come on," I said to Max. "Let's go inside. I'll make us some dinner." "Sounds good, Dad." We walked back to the house together, leaving the past burning behind us, and I never looked back.